Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into an analysis that claims the world fundamentally changed on a single day. A day when the Black Sea, one of the planet's most critical waterways, was suddenly and permanently closed. We're going to walk through the source material that lays out exactly how this one move could mark the end of an entire era. So the whole analysis we're looking at today, it's really built on this one simple idea. If you control the world's choke points, you have the ultimate power. It's a concept as old as empires themselves, and the source argues it's the absolute key to understanding what it calls a single event that has completely redrawn the map of global power.
And this is the moment at the very heart of this entire breakdown. The source material is really clear about this. This wasn't just some temporary military exercise. The keywords to focus on here are permanent and closure. The claim is that Russia has essentially slammed the door on NATO's military access to the Black Sea, and they've thrown away the key.
So what's the immediate fallout? Well, according to the source, it's just staggering. This number, 240 million, that's the annual tonnage of cargo that is now effectively cut off from 17 different European ports. And look, that's not just a statistic, right? That's a massive, massive shock to the system, a disruption to supply chains that sends an economic earthquake across the entire continent.
So the big question is, how on earth did we get here? The analysis we're digging into argues this didn't just happen overnight, not even close. Instead, it's presented as the final move, the checkmate, in a huge geopolitical chess game that's been playing out for the last 30 years. Let's take a look at the moves that led to this.
Okay, so this timeline, it's basically the backbone of the entire argument the source is making. It kicks off right here in 1990 with what it calls a crucial promise from the US that NATO would not expand eastward. But then it lays out what it describes as a series of broken promises. 1999, 2004, 2008, each one a step closer to Russia's border, and it all comes to a head with the conflicts in 2014 and 2022. The story being told here is of a slow but very deliberate march toward this very confrontation.
And to back this up, the source pulls out a really heavy hitter, George Kennan. This is the guy who literally wrote the strategy for America during the Cold War. And it highlights his warning from way back in 1998, where he called NATO expansion the most fateful error. He basically predicted it would light a fire under the exact kind of nationalist, anti-Western feeling that the source claims is now boiling over.
From there, the analysis pivots to the economic front. And this is where it gets really controversial, because the source points to these IMF numbers to argue that Western sanctions completely backfired. Just look at the data it presents. You've got Russian GDP shown growing, while at the same time, you see inflation skyrocketing in a place like Poland and a mind-blowing spike in gas prices for the EU. The narrative here is that the very tools meant to cripple Russia ended up wounding Europe instead.
So this, of course, raises the big, obvious question. If the sea is closed, why doesn't the most powerful military alliance in the world, just open it? Well, the analysis we're looking at argues that NATO is completely stuck, and it lays out a few key reasons why its hands are tied.
The source points to quotes just like this one as Exhibit A for a total lack of political will. This alleged statement from Germany's defense minister is presented as a pretty blunt admission. It's basically saying, look, we don't have the ships, and frankly, even if we did, we are not about to risk a direct war and everything that comes with that, including nuclear escalation, with Russia. And get this, according to what the source says is leaked info, even the Pentagon ran the numbers and came up with, well, nothing. Just dead ends. Option 1, try to force the straits open. Can't. Turkey's blocking the way. Option 2, how about a massive Berlin-style airlift? The price tag is just considered politically impossible to get through Congress. Which leaves option 3, just accept it and try to negotiate. But that's seen as a total public surrender. And this right here, this table really gets to the economic core of the problem for Europe. The source uses countries like Germany, which depends on Russian gas flowing through a pipeline under the now closed Black Sea, to make a simple but powerful point. How can you possibly wage a serious military campaign against the very country that keeps your homes warm and your factories running?
And the linchpin in all of this is Turkey. So under this old treaty from 1936 called the Montreux Convention, Turkey literally controls who gets to sail through the Bosphorus and Dardanelles Straits. And here's the kicker, the real irony of the whole situation. By refusing to let NATO warships in, Turkey, a NATO member, is effectively enforcing Russia's closure of the sea.
So look, this isn't just about one sea. The analysis uses this single event as a springboard to make its biggest claim yet, that what we're all watching is the actual collapse of the world order we've known since the Cold War.
and the messy birth of whatever comes next. The way this analysis frames it, the old order was held up by two giant pillars. And now, it says they're both starting to crumble. Pillar number 1, unchallenged sea power, was just shattered by what happened in the Black Sea. And pillar number 2, the US dollar being used as a weapon, is being worn down by a global backlash to sanctions. This, it argues, is what's setting the stage for a new order.
Now, what's so wild about this slide is the economic reality it shows. The analysis points to the BRICS countries, which now make up a bigger slice of the world's GDP than the G7. It argues this bloc is the engine that's building a whole parallel financial world, things like the BRICS bridge payment system, specifically to operate outside of the US dollar's reach. And the source claims the rest of the world is watching very, very closely. It uses this supposed quote from a top Chinese admiral as proof. The message couldn't be clearer. What Russia just did in the Black Sea, China thinks it can do in the South China Sea. And that's a waterway that's way, way more important for global trade.
Okay, so this is all big-picture geopolitics, right? But why should you care? The analysis argues this is not some abstract thing happening far away. It claims this has real, tangible effects that connect directly to your everyday life, right down to your wallet. All right, first up, food prices. According to the source, the first and most immediate hit was an 18% jump in the price of wheat in 1 week. And why? Because 50 million tons of Ukrainian grain is now trapped. The analysis draws a straight line from this naval action to what you end up paying for a loaf of bread.
And it's not just food. The source also points to energy prices, claiming that a country like Spain is now paying 4 times more for American natural gas than it used to pay for Russian gas. And that extra cost? It argues that shows up right on your heating and electric bills.
So then the analysis kind of pulls the camera back to show the global ripple effects. And the argument is that nobody is untouched by this. For Europe, it predicts more economic pain. For the US, higher costs. But it also suggests that for countries in Asia, Africa, and Latin America, this whole shift actually creates an opening to build new partnerships and become less dependent on the West.
So, in the end, the source material we've walked through today uses the closing of a single sea to make a much, much bigger point, that the stable world order we've all grown up in is breaking apart. And it leaves us with this final, powerful question. Are we just watching a dispute over a sea? Or are we actually witnessing the violent end of one era and the beginning of a new one?